Some even link a Masonic conspiracy to the most notorious murderer of all time.
I suppose one of the areas where we have and continue from time to time to be brought into conspiracy theory is the Jack the Ripper saga.
In 1888, 5 women were knifed to death in the streets of London. Their throats slit, bodies mutilated, internal organs removed. And though these deaths took place in London, the assassin was never identified. For a few conspiracy theorists, the methods of Jack the Ripper point to the Masons.
At 1:44 a.m. on the 30th of September 1888, the body of Catherine Eddowes was found in a corner of Mitre Square. The mutilations to her face and to her body were fairly extreme. People have since linked on to a possible Masonic connection to this. Firstly, 2 inverted V's were cut onto her cheeks. Some people have claimed if you put those 2 V's together, you would actually get an M denoting a Mason. Secondly, half her apron was removed, and obviously the link to aprons and Masons is obvious. Thirdly, the name Mitre Square, well, people are saying obviously the mitre and the square both being Masonic symbols.
And according to the conspiracy theory, when the police entered the picture, the Masonic connection only deepened.
At 2:55, just an hour and 10 minutes after the murder of Catherine Eddowes in Mitre Square, PC Alfred Long was walking up Goulston Street. He found half a white apron. Jack had cut it away from the body and used it to wipe his knife clean and wipe his hands whilst running away from the murder scene. But it was what was found next to the apron that's since become the stuff of legend.
There was an inscription apparently left on the wall, and it was something to the effect that it was the Jewes, J-U-W-E-S, that did it. In the American Masonic rituals, there is in one part of one of the ceremonies reference to a group of 3 people who were titled Jubilo, Jubilar, Jubilum.
These 3 so-called Jews were the men who wanted to force the secrets of a master Mason from Hiram Abiff. What's more, when the inscription was discovered, it was promptly destroyed on the orders of a Freemason.
The key thing which was supposed to be it, and it's where the one Freemason who was involved, the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police.
The charge is that Police Commissioner Charles Warren, himself a Mason, had the inscription removed to cover up evidence of a Masonic involvement. But why would a Mason go on such a killing spree?
There are a number of writers who have claimed that this was a Masonic conspiracy for a number of different reasons, but generally a conspiracy to preserve the status quo.
That status quo was the position of Prince Albert Edward, grandson of Queen Victoria. Allegedly, he had an affair with a prostitute named Annie Crook, who became pregnant. 4 of her fellow streetwalkers knew of this, so all 5 women were murdered to keep the pregnancy secret. And the man who supposedly did it, Dr. William Gall, was the Queen's private physician. He was also a Freemason. Did a royalty-connected Mason surface into the public spotlight just long enough to protect a friendly prince? Is this how they operate, and why they've endured for so long? Freemason legends portray the craft as quietly existing for thousands of years. But modern speculative Freemasonry came into being at a very particular time and place. A critical period in history that saw the fall of kings and the rise of what some fear is a new world order. How did the modern fraternity of Freemasons begin? And why do they keep secrets from the outside world?
I'm Jim Mars, and I am not a Mason. Although Freemasonry is outwardly a very benign and philanthropic organization, there are dark sides to it.
My name is Stephen Tsoukalis, and I'm not a Mason. If it were a secret society, many of us would not know about it. It's not a secret society in that sense, but it is a society with secrets.
The modern Masonic movement is usually recognized as having started in 18th century England.
The Grand Lodge of England was founded in 1717 in London.
Near St. Paul's Cathedral, a group of gentlemen convene at a pub called the Goose and Gridiron and formally pledge their allegiance to a club they call the Freemasons. While the original operative Freemasons were the stonecutters of the Middle Ages, this new Masonic order is made up of merchants and aristocrats who indulge in secret passwords and costume dramas. They call themselves speculative Masons, who discuss progressive ideas and speculate on the meaning of life.
What happens in 1717 is still relatively mysterious. We've only got one broadly contemporary account of the foundation of the Grand Lodge. There are no reports in contemporary newspapers.
Freemasons have a long tradition of secrecy. Some of the original secrets of the Freemasons were the operative secrets. They knew how to cut stone so it would be as strong as possible if they put it across a lintel. They knew how to make arches. Very importantly, they knew how to make squares.
Getting the best jobs meant proving you were a member of the craft.
The stonemason who is travelling from one building site to another, how is he going to identify himself to someone else that he is a stonemason? Well, he's got a handshake, and this only shows that they are stonemasons.
The operative tradition of keeping trade secrets carried over to the speculative Masons, who established handshakes, passwords, and rituals to create a sense of membership in their club. Just a few years after the meeting at the Goose and Gridiron, the Freemasons had hundreds of members, several branches called lodges, and a written constitution filled with fantastic symbols, signals, tools, and hand clasps. Even their own alphabet. They eventually devise a hierarchy of novice Masons, Master Masons, and Grand Masters. 3 levels called degrees, each one reached through a secret initiation and rewarded with a password that members swear never to reveal under penalty of death. New members are never asked to join. They must do the asking, and they are approved by secret ballot. A white ball for a yes vote, a single dark stone means exclusion. It's the origin of the term blackball. Tools of the builder's trade become symbols of the order. Speculative Freemasonry was formally established in 1717. But some claim the craft goes back well before that meeting at the Goose and Gridiron. Just 7 miles from Edinburgh, Scotland, on the estate of one of the great Scottish clans, stands Rosslyn. For 500 years, one of the most intriguing churches ever built. Rosslyn is so full of strange symbols, observers have found links between this church and everything from the Masons to Solomon to the Templar Knights, whom legend says fled to Scotland once they were disbanded. These 2 columns are supposed replicas of pillars the Templars found in Solomon's Temple. Some claim the symbolism of Rosslyn links all these stories and even points the way to the Holy Grail. But it's all speculation.
In an age of uncertainty, we seek certainty. Rosalind is not about certainty or putting something in a neat little box that everyone can say that's for sure what it is. That is not the point. It is a personal challenge for us to decode this building.
I've studied this certainly 40 years. I have to say that the place is as big a mystery to me almost as it was when I first began as to why it was built. It is a total mystery.
William Sinclair was the Masonic Grand Master of Scotland, and a favorite theory says he was a descendant of the Templar Knights. According to the legend, after their destruction by Philip of France in 1307, some of them retreated to Rosslyn to preserve their secrets in ritual and in stone, and to nurture their hatred of the French crown. Centuries passed. In the 1700s, they allegedly re-emerged as the Freemasons. And in 1789, after 5 centuries in hiding, they retaliated against the King of France by igniting the French Revolution, or so the legend goes. It was an event unprecedented in history, the overthrow of a sitting king. Certain royals, who couldn't accept that the people could stage such a revolt, decided that the revolution had been a Masonic act of revenge. This is the origin of all modern conspiracy theories, the terrifying idea that history is made in secret.
There's something in us that desires to belong to the inner ring, that circle that believes in certain secrets of which the outside is not privy to.
If you can build a conspiracy theory about Jews or Freemasons or Catholics or humanists or any group, you're starting to make sense of a chaotic world because there's an invisible, hidden hand that's secretly operating everything, and that has a certain psychological appeal.
But the conspiracy theories don't end with France. Even more ambitious is the idea that the Masons established an entirely new country of their own, the United States. It is one of America's great ironies that the leadership of a country founded upon the principles of liberty and open government is deeply entwined with a cryptic club where modern men masquerade as ancient kings. It's been this way since the beginning. It's December 1773. In a Boston tavern, a group of wealthy businessmen hold a secret meeting. Among them, Paul Revere and John Hancock. Both are Freemasons. The inn is a Masonic hangout. Tonight's agenda, however, is not ritual, but revolution. For years, these upper-class colonists have initiated members by acting out strange costume dramas. Now, fed up with English taxes, they dress up to initiate a new nation. They disguise themselves as Mohawk Indians, sneak aboard a British merchant ship, and dump a cargo of tea into the harbor. This act of sabotage becomes known as the Boston Tea Party.
Citizens are burned up about unfair taxes. They're going to take the tea and throw it in the harbor, and of course it's widely held to be a Masonic event.
2.5 years later, John Hancock and his brother Masons formally declare America's separation from Great Britain. At least 9 and perhaps as many as 50 Masons signed their names to the Declaration of Independence. Without the Masons, there may never have been an independent America.
Yeah, I think you could safely say that modern society would have been very different in its culture, in its aesthetics, in its outlook, if we hadn't have had Freemasonry developing in the way it did in the 18th century.
But conspiracy theory holds that this government is not just